I'm using my whiteboard today just to do a quick demonstration on how to get a decent amount of money from Adsense. Adsense is basically a three-step process that you need to be concerned with. So the first step is you need traffic. You need traffic to the ads that you're going to put on your website. The second step, you need ads that give you a decent amount of money per click. And this is a mistake that a lot of newbies to AdSense make, is that they pick keywords that get pennies per click. So even when they do end up eventually getting traffic, they learn too late that their traffic doesn't really make them all that much because the cost per click is so low. So you want to make sure that your cost per click is, some marketers like to use the dollar as the make or break point. I don't really look at it that way. I look at it as how good's the traffic, how's the cost per click, the combination wise. If the traffic's really, really good, then I may go lower than $1 cost per click. If the traffic's really low, then I'll want the cost per click to be higher. And of course the last part is conversion, or the click-through rate. For AdSense, we could say. Now, click-through rate, surprising to some people, actually varies from niche to niche. So some people have noticed that some niches are more click-happy than others. For example, I know that a lot of niches in the women's department, such as clothing shopping or like winter jackets, people tend to click on ads more, and this is usually women like shopping online. They'll see advertisements, they'll get drawn and they'll click it. Whereas there are other niches like internet marketing where people recognize that these are ads and they have a kind of ad blindness where they just ignore them, and the click-through rates are ridiculously low. So there are a few things you can do for click-through rate, but a lot of click-through rate is based on the keywords you can target, and really this one here is the one you can't really figure out without testing. The first two, you can figure these out. You can go into Google AdWords keyword tool, like I showed in day 2 of my 7-day action guide, and you can get a huge list of keywords and find out what the traffic is for each individual keyword, and then just use some common sense to decide whether you can rank for those keywords or not and get traffic for them. And you can figure out the cost per click because Google gives you it in their AdWords keyword tool, so you can pick keywords that are decent traffic, that get a decent cost per click, no problem. So these right here, that's as easy as it gets. This is the hard part. Click-through rate has a lot to do with testing, but I can tell you a few general basics or a few generalizations that have worked for other marketers. So if you think of this as your typical web page. So you have a header up here, you have a sidebar here, and you have your main body content here. Okay, so that's a typical 2-column website. Now some websites have a 3rd column here, but that's becoming more and more rare. Really, what you're finding now is that most websites are 2-column now. 2-column, or sometimes even 1-column. But let's say for this example, that's 2-column, because that tends to be more common. So you have a few options to place ads here, and Google will tell you that the hotspots are where the header is, and the very start of the content is hotspot, and this is supposed to be a medium spot, or not quite as hot, but these are supposed to be the hot areas. And then down here you get a little bit, eyes tend to wander a little bit, but more often if you look at heat maps, they show that visitors' eyes are more often centered on these areas here. But to be honest with you, even though that's what the heat map says, that's not necessarily always true. And you should always test what your visitors do, because there is no general template that works for every single niche, every single website out there. But what I've found to have success with is that I've generally found that this box right here in the sidebar works better than what Google will tell you. They claim that this area isn't that much of a hotspot, but I usually find that visitors, when they enter we're so left-brained, when visitor hits your web page, they usually look from left to right, top to bottom, but left to right. So if a visitor, when he looks at the page, usually his eyes will hit the start of the content, and then he will read and he'll work his eyes this way. And when he looks at the sidebar, he usually looks at the top portion here. So if you have an ad right here, I found that my click-through rate for here was incredibly high, and sometimes even higher than in the content. Up here, I found to be fairly disappointing. I know that eyes tend to wander here occasionally, but I think that there's a lot of ad blindness in this area. I think people tend to, if they see any kind of links, or they see anything that resembles Adsense, they tend to just ignore it and move down to the content. In this area right here, for ads, this has been the highest converting of all the locations for most webmasters online, and usually for me too, is content right here. And you have a couple options here. So you could put an ad on the left side, or you can put an ad on the right side. You usually really want to do one or the other, because Google released a algorithm update where they penalized websites that had too many ads at the top of a web page. So you really need to pick your ads sparingly. I have found from my testing that ads on the left side are higher converting than ads on the right side. And I've also found from my testing that ads at the top of content are incredibly much higher converting than ads further down the page. So my recommendation is, you do have to do testing to make sure, but my recommendation is that you do an ad at the top of your web page, the body content, and you have it wrapped in with the rest of your content. Because as I mentioned, we tend to read from left to right. So when you enter this page from the internet, you're going to hit the page and you're going to want to look at the web page. This is where your eye's going to go, right here. Right where this ad is. So that's, if there are relevant ads, the secret is if there's relevant ads here and this is where your eyes go, then there's a good chance you're going to click it. If there's no relevant ads, then you're probably not going to click it. So a large portion of the click-through rate is whether these ads match what your content's on. So let's say your content is on drills. Well, if I have an ad here for drills 60% off, then as a visitor looking for drills, I'm going to find this interesting, and there's a good chance that I will click on it. So that is the key. But what helps you decide whether there's going to be relevant ads for what you're looking for? Well, there's two things you can do. One, you can do a Google search of your keyword ahead of time. So if your niche is on electric drills, you can go to Google